Executives often complain about the lack of time they have, when in reality, they have all the time there is. The issue, of course, is how they're investing their time. In this presentation, Dr. Terry Paulson offers helpful ideas about how managers can make wiser time and priority investments. Dr. Terry Paulson is a psychologist and author of such popular books as 50 Tips for Speaking Like a Pro and Paulson on Change. A prominent platform presenter as well, Dr. Paulson is a member of the International Speakers Hall of Fame. Let's join Dr. Terry Paulson as he talks about how to develop a time investment strategy.
Today we're going to discuss developing a time investment strategy. How many of you would agree that you're tired of hearing words like work smart, cost containment? How many of you agree cost containment is not going away? Our real challenge is, how do we manage cost controls, but at the same time strategically invest the resources necessary to invent the future? That's what's involved in working smart. How do I get the right things done? So today's topic allows us to look at practical insights that will allow us to do that as leaders. First point, have a strategic time investment strategy. We will never have enough time to do everything. Every single day, you're given 86,400 seconds. We spend some of it, we waste some of it, and we invest some of it. When you add your team collectively to that, we realize it's how we use our time that determines whether or not we're going to be effective. It's been estimated that in the average home, a television can be on 7 1/4 hours a day. Now, when you hear that, you go, I don't know what home we're talking about, but realize when you come home, typically we turn on the television for background noise. It's the cheapest way to have a party without having to have anybody there. In fact, if you don't like one group, you can turn to another channel. But what ends up happening, we wonder where our time goes when we have habits that interfere with our ability to get the right work done. The key point that I want you to focus on from the very beginning is the importance of having a strategic focus to your prioritizing process. Every single day, I ask myself the question, what's the best use of my time today? If you've ever struggled with people who work for you, who don't seem to manage their time well, there's an easy way to do that. Ask them the question every day, what are the 3 principal things you're going to work on today? First time you ask it, they'll know you've been to a seminar and you're acting bizarre. But if you continue to ask that question, all of a sudden it hits them. You expect them to have a plan and to invest their time wisely. That's the job of creating a strategic focus to your time investment plan. Make sure you're investing your time where it counts. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com, said, our wealth vanishes the moment we stop doing a good job for our customers. Every single time we look at working smart, we ought to put the customer in the front lens, the people we serve, and say, is what I am presently doing making a difference for that person? If it's not, we ought to change our time priorities and make sure that we are investing in the things that actually do count. The next point is, avoid the kiss of yes. That is a chapter in Guy Kawasaki's book, Rules for Revolutionaries. He said that the danger that many companies have is that they say yes to far too many things. As a result of that, they don't have the energy to say yes emphatically to the strategic focus that is most important. That means you have to learn to say no to people. How many of you have had times where people have asked you, they'll come up to you and they say, are you busy? I love that question. No, just waiting for you to come. Of course I'm busy. Now, I don't say it in that tone, but if somebody says to me, are you busy? I say, yes, I am. But what is it? I realize that every interruption that I have, every change in priorities, takes me away from the strategic focus that I have for my day. It is my responsibility to emphatically and frequently say no to things that come up, because if I don't say no, I won't have the time and energy to do the things that really matter. As a result of that, think of your people's time the same way. I oftentimes will have an idea and I'll share an idea, and all of a sudden, hours later, my secretary will come back and she'll say, here's what you talked about earlier. And all of a sudden I realized they took my side comment as though it was a priority. You have a lot more impact than you know on the comments and the work of your people. I immediately say to Nancy now, let me tell you, this is not a primary priority. This is something to put on the back burner, but it's something I want to look at a later point. Keep your people focused on the things that matter most. Tom Peters, along with many others, talks about the importance of companies being tight and loose. Most companies are tight or loose. When things are going well, they get loose. Hey, you need equipment, buy it, here's money. You need people, hire them, hire. As soon as things get tight and the economy begins to turn the other way, they say, we're tight all over. You need money, you got to be kidding me. Take up a collection, it works well at the airports. You need people, have children. They will grow. For some of you, this will be a bigger commitment. You see, excellent companies give a very different message. Be tight everywhere that it is off focus to our strategic vision. Be tight where you can and invest resources where it matters most. Your job is no longer saying do more with less. It's do the right less with more. Too many companies are too democratic in how they deal with funding problems. Instead of upsetting a department, we say we'll have cutbacks in all of the departments. What if really moving strategically means I've got to make sure that I take 20% away from your department and give it to another department? That's a tough leadership decision, but one we need to make. I work with one company where the award they gave for exceptional leadership went to a supervisor who went to his immediate boss and said, in looking at this contract and the amount of costs that are tied into it, we're not making money on what we're doing. And at the present way it is structured, we are not going to make money. I suggest we say no to the contract. I realize this may mean my job. I am less concerned about me, I'm more concerned about my people. I've got great people working for me. I just want to make sure we find a place to use them. He ended up getting an award for leadership by ending his own job. The interesting thing with that kind of vision, they made room for other places within that organization because you need leaders that are able to focus on the things that really count. Be tight where you can, loose where you can make a difference. The next point, have a daily plan and use it. Every time management expert, every person on priority throughout history has always said the importance of having a plan. They talk, however, about the planning paradox. People say, I'm so busy, I've got so many things to do, I don't have time to plan. And besides, there are going to be so many interruptions, why have a plan when you're going to have to change it? That's like a lumberjack saying, I've got too many trees to chop down, I don't have time to sharpen my axe. The responsibility is to understand, whenever you start your day, having a plan gives you your choice point. Sometimes 5 minutes invested in a really important item is worth far more than handling and getting things off of your to-do list. You see, how many of you are guilty of this? Whenever I have a to-do list, I get satisfaction of crossing things off. Do any of you experience that? Every day, ooh, another one, another one. That's why at the start of the day, a lot of people are just crossing off the easy things to get them out of the way. Then your interruptions start because everyone else has finished their easy things. And then they want to ruin your day. And so we run around doing insignificant work. Our challenge is stay focused on your plan. I don't care whether you use a time system. I don't care if you use Day Planner. I don't care if you have Palm Pilot or you just use a scratch of paper. Have a time in your day where you focus on what is priority. I use Alan Laken's system of A, B, C priority. A, must do today. Most important. Will not go home without this done. Those items I'm going to number, and I get busy at the start of my day getting done the things that I have to get done. B, important will soon become an A. If I can make any progress on it, I like it. C, insignificant on the present scope of things, but if I get time, would like to get to it. The biggest danger we have is on days when we have time, we don't use our time. We have a tendency to waste it. Hey, I've got time. So we get busy doing insignificant things, having a lot more conversations and times, but we're losing our focus. If you want to be effective with your own time management and the time management of your team, make sure you encourage everybody to have a plan and use it. From that, it allows you to make all those choices. When any interruption comes in, I ask myself, is it better for me to continue to stay focused on the priorities I have, or to adjust that and take on something that's new? I have found when somebody interrupts me and I say, I'm busy, I say at the same time, if it's important, I'll have the conversation, but just let me make a note about where I was going. As soon as I use that note, what does the person realize? I was doing something that was significant. Oftentimes they'll say, if it's that important, why don't you get back to me later? And then I use the note to write back their extension, and I have a note to remind me to get back to the person. People will give you the luxury of using your time wisely when you do honor them and get back to them later on in the day at a time when it's more effective for you to communicate and talk. My goal is always making good use of my time. That's what I keep focusing on, and I challenge my team to do the same. Have the strategic focus, have a plan, and adjust on the basis of whether or not what you are interrupted by is more important. If you feel frustrated at the end of the day that you did not finish many items, gradually start adding important interruptions to your to-do list and cross them off. It makes you feel satisfied. And at the end of the day, you have a record of the fact that you did some significant things and you accomplished something. Because how many of you agree? We manage ourselves first. Oftentimes we spend our days going home at night thinking about the things we didn't get accomplished instead of thinking about the things that we do. Keep your focus on priority and catch yourself being effective and allow yourself to do that. All right? So have a plan and use it. Next point. Have a mission-centered measurement system. Think about that for a moment. How many of you agree you play differently when you know somebody's keeping score? If I'm out shooting baskets with the guys, and we're just shooting around, it's one kind of thing. But as soon as somebody says, we're playing to 21 and loser pays, I immediately know it's a different kind of game. And I get far more intense. Okay, now we've got a game and I've got to win. I believe one of the problems of time and priority management is we don't create meaningful measurements that allow people to create a scorecard and establish an early warning system that allows them to be aware when problems occur. That's why time factors are so important. If I'm able to do that, I increase the likelihood that people will understand that issues are important and we need to surface them early. So have a meaningful measurement system and at the same time realize that if you have too many of them, no one will pay attention to any. How many of you have found that when managers come in, they may start to keep some record, but when they leave, no one looks at it? Not only should you have meaningful measurements, but you should limit them to the things that are really important. What are the measurements that you need to keep visible to create the scorecard? And what are the measurements you need to stop so that you can free your people to look at what's really important? I like to ask CEOs, what are the measurements that keep you up at night? I want to know what are the measurements that are important to you, because my job is to make sure those measurements are good and that we surface the problem early. The next point is, delegate with high expectations, but manage priority shifts. Peter Ueberroth was in charge of the U.S. Olympic Committee during the 1984 Olympics. He started every planning session with the same sign. Lack of planning on your part does not constitute a crisis on my part. Now, that sounds a little cold, and yet he always warmed it up with this statement or a variation of it. We have only 16 days for the Olympics. We cannot postpone it. People are coming to town. So if I have given you any responsibility, it is your job to get it done on time with excellence. But if you have any trouble doing that, get to me as soon as you're aware of that so that if we have to make a priority shift and move resources, we have time to make that possible. All of us know the importance of establishing time frames, but we frequently forget to let people know in the real world, sometimes you have to make priority shifts. You see, I believe in taking it one day at a time, but some days more than one day attacks you at the same time. It's our responsibility to make sure that we are building a responsive style that allows people to come to us early if there is a problem. How many of you grew up and crammed on certain tests or projects? How many of you are guilty of doing that? I was guilty. You always knew you could have time, and so you could wait to the end and you'd have time to get it done. The challenge today is that we have so many things we're trying to juggle. There is no time to get caught up. What happens is people play juggler. How many of you play juggler? Oh, you get things, oh, yeah. Some of you feel you shouldn't even be here today because you have so many things back at home. And you come back and you go to your boss and say, hi, I have too much to do. What does your boss say to you? Oh, we'll give you time management. Oh, shit. You know, pretty soon you're juggling all these things. And then they go to a program on change. Oh, this is good. You're trying to get all this stuff done. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you get near the end and you realize you don't have time, most of us go to our manager and we say, I didn't want to tell you this, but tomorrow we die. I love it. When do you want to know if there are problems? As soon as you notice it. Because if I have to move resources, I need time. One manager called it the 4 times rule. He built in a commitment to no surprises. For every unit of time you're going to be late, give me 4 times the warning. You're going to be an hour late, give me 4 hours. Going to be a day late, give me a week. Going to be a month late, give me 4 months. Because you no longer are staffed with enough people to get everything done last minute. Cost overruns are not accepted. Having people to continue to do more and more just burns them out. How many of you agree we end up burning out our best people? We go to our good people and we say, work, and they eventually say, well, what did you ask so-and-so? Well, you know, Jim, you're the only one that can do it. Our responsibility is to make sure that we keep people paced, focused on what's effective, and are willing to come in and give adequate resources when we need to. Who are the people you need to communicate the importance of a priority shift to in your work environment? That's one of the challenges we need to make sure that we focus on. Final point for today's session. Balance your professional and personal commitments. Balance is an important word that you hear a lot about in leadership. But the problem with balance in today's world is that commitments for business, timelines, and appointments get into your calendar. Personal commitments don't. How many of you say to a friend, let's get together soon? Well, soon never comes. You try and get 2 calendars together. You ever done that? Okay, what's the day we can get together? You go through it. Okay, years from now, we'll eventually have that event and that experience. If it doesn't appear in your calendar, it's not important to you. Lily Tomlin said, the trouble with a rat race is that even when you win, you're still a rat. I think it's a great line, and it reminds us of something. I don't want to lose my vitality in what I do to be a professional. If the only thing I do is work, I lose my perspective and the reason for doing what I want to do. In fact, my wife was good at helping me with this. I love what I do. I love presenting. I hope that shows. I was doing far too much of it. We had not had a vacation. We were not spending as much time as was necessary. And as a result of that, when I came home from a long series of programs, she let me put my stuff away. I thought that was a nice touch. Then when I came down, she said, we need to have a conversation. And I said, certainly. And she said, you know, I know you love what you do. And I know you make a difference. I get to read the letters. Men in this room, how many of you realize I'm in deep trouble right now? This is not going well for me. You've heard it before. And so I was riveted by her focus. And she said to me, Terry, I didn't marry you not to see you. And I want to make sure you love what you do, but I want to make sure we still have our time together. That was a critical turning point in our relationship. Now, I don't know. She may have said that to me at other times in other ways, but on that particular day, I heard the message. Think about it for a moment. How many of you would agree? In your dating phase, you spend a lot of time together. That is the sales phase of your relationship. I love you, you love me. Oh, let's talk. Let's go out tonight. Bingo, bingo. This is exciting. Now, as soon as you become married, what happens to your frequency of dates? It begins to go downhill. Pretty soon you're saying to somebody, we haven't talked in ages. Well, halftime's coming up. Maybe we can talk then. And what ends up happening is we put ourselves into a position where we gradually lose our balance. Make a long story short, we had a great conversation that night, and what we decided to do was to buy tickets. How many of you agree, when you have season tickets to something, you go? Once we've bought these things, we know we're going to use them. So as a result of that, I don't even care if we're romantic that night. We're going. We paid for these things. We're going to the show. As a result of that, it changes your behavior. See, when you have tickets, your day goes differently. Would you not agree? On days you have tickets, what's different about the day? It goes much faster because you're anticipating going to the show or the event. We go to our boss. We go to our boss and say, I've got tickets. I want you to know, don't come to me at 3:45 telling me you have some vision, all right? I've got tickets. I'm leaving at 4. As a result of that, you get a tremendous amount of work done. How many agree? On days you have tickets, you get, what's the secret of life? Have tickets every day. And be willing to give them up when you really have to give that time to your customers and to your people. How many agree? Some days you have to give up tickets. But it shouldn't happen often. I believe if you lose your vitality and your energy and your relationships, what's the value of all the money that I've earned? I actually believe that one of the biggest dangers we have is that you will burn out your gold, your best people. Most of you know who your best people are. You go to those people over and over again. They won't tell you they're going to leave. They just send around their resume, and when they're burned out, they leave. Even worse, they come to themselves and say, why am I busting myself over this when other people are paid the same thing and they're not doing any more? Your job is to make sure they find balance in their lives, and at the same time, on the day, they make good use of their time. I also find that it is not just your spouses that are important. Some of you are not married. How many of you agree? If you want to spend time with somebody, schedule it. Once it's in the calendar, it's going to happen. The people that you most want to spend time with are usually busy people. If you don't schedule it, you don't see them. Schedule time with the people that are important. You see, if you ever complain that you are not getting out of your life what you want out of your life, it is your responsibility to realize prioritizing is not just business. It's putting your calendar where your priorities are. And when you do that, you're effective in managing priorities and in working smart. Let's summarize the key points from this session. First of all, have a time investment strategy that makes sure you invest your time and the time of your team in the things that matter most. Secondly, make sure you have a daily plan and you use it. Once you have the plan, it gives you your choice point. Avoid the kiss of yes. It is too easy to do too many things and avoid the focus that allows you to stay on the things that matter most. Learn to say no so that people can check the priorities and stay on the things that count. Also, establish meaningful measurement systems that allow you to establish early warning and an opportunity to create a scorecard for your effectiveness. When you're playing the great game of business, you need to be aware of what winning is. And finally, have balance in your personal and professional commitments. Buy a few tickets and make sure your calendar reflects your values and priorities. When it does, I guarantee you that you'll be in a position where you're managing your priorities and you're working smart. Thank you for attending today's session.
The great management expert Peter Drucker once said that innovation is not about being brilliant, it's about being conscientious. So, in today's world of business, where one innovative idea can make more difference than ever before, how do you keep creative thinking at the forefront of everyone's attention? Bob Johnson has some creative ideas on this subject. Bob Johnson has trained thousands of managers on 5 continents. When he shares management techniques and strategies, you know he's not speaking from theory, but from practice. He's been there. Let's join Bob Johnson as he discusses how to tap the creativity of your management team.
How do you tap the creativity of your management team? How do you help your managers use more of their creative potential? That's what we're going to talk about and discuss in this next few moments that we spend together. When you talk about this business of creative thinking, would you agree with this simple concept that if you and I don't find a better way to do it, our competition will? So true, so true. When you talk about this business of creative thinking, we have to think in terms of reinventing ourselves and helping the people on our team to reinvent themselves. In essence, the purpose that we have in the next few minutes is to look at ways in which we can build and maintain a more creative environment which promotes a commitment by all to a concept of continuous improvement, because we've got to find a better way. While you and I are sitting here working to develop more of our creative ability in this training environment that we're in together, our competitors are sitting in their offices or out there in their regions thinking about how they can steal our best customer. So we've got to constantly be looking and thinking creatively. With the pace of change that we have in front of us, we've got to change on the run today. Is that true? No longer do we have the luxury of time to sit down and put together the perfect plan. That creates paralysis by analysis, and it just simply takes too long. We have to plan and think creatively and do it while we are on the move. The key thing that particularly in today's climate we have to console ourselves with, we have to come to grips with, is that we must build a creative environment in our companies, in our departments, rather than the old caretaker mode of management. If all we do is sit and try to take care of what we have, with the rate of change being what it is, we'll be left behind. Now, the most critical point that I need to put in place here, that we need to discuss and accept, when you talk about this business of creative thinking, you talk about this business of the importance of changing and changing quickly, the key point is this: in order for things to change in my department, in order for things to change in my division or in my entire organization, in order for things to change, I first must change. I've got to be willing to reinvent myself before I can ask those who work on my team to change and run with me toward achieving new goals and objectives. So how do you go about developing and maintaining a more creative environment? It begins with a simple process. And rather than talk about the process, let's just do it. I'm going to ask you a question. It's a simple question. And I'm going to ask you, in answering this question, to simply turn on the green light in your mind. And what I mean by that is that if you're in your automobile and you're driving down the road and you come to a traffic signal and the light's red, what do? You stop. If the light is green, you keep going. The point of this exercise in answering the question is to keep the green light on in your thinking. And when I give you the question, your job will be to write down as many answers as you can possibly think of in a period of 2 minutes. It's what we call green light thinking. Here's the question. Think and write as many answers as possible. In what ways can we get our people to want to do that which must be done. You have 2 minutes. Please write. The red light on. And I'm going to ask you to, with that red light on and with a bit of judicial thinking, go back and look at the ideas you've just jotted down. And if you would please, in your opinion, what are the best 2 ideas that you've put on your list? And simply put a tick mark beside what you believe to be the best 2 ideas you have. Would you do that, please? All right, thank you. Thank you. Now, what I'll ask you to do, it's now time to select a table leader. And this is a lot of fun. We do it by democratic approach. Would everybody take your finger and hold it up in the air just like this? When I'm going to count to 3. I'll say 1, 2, 3, point. And when I do that, point to the person at your table who's going to be your table leader. 1, 2, 3, point. We got a table leader here. We have a table leader here. We have one here and I believe here. Is that correct? Yes, sir. All right. Table leaders, what I'll ask you to do, please, you will have 60 seconds only. You are not to discuss the ideas. Simply hear the ideas that have tick marks beside them. And you will consolidate the list. Now then, before you begin, the least number of ideas that you could possibly come up with at the table is 2. That's assuming that everybody had ticked the same identical 2 ideas. You could not have less than 2. You could not possibly have more than 8 because there are 4 to the team. So 2 times 4 makes 8 if you all had different ideas. Table leaders, you eliminate duplication as we go. You have 60 seconds, table leader. Consolidate the ideas. Thank you. What I'd like to do now is to hear, table leaders, what you've come up with, and I'll ask someone to start it off. And when you hear an idea, table leaders, if someone from another group reads an idea that's also on your list, just cross it off your list, and we will eliminate duplication as we go. Someone start me off. Who has an idea?
Empowerment.
Empower them. This process, as you will see, this process we're working on right now in itself will take a giant step forward in empowering the people that work for us. Another one. Yes, sir.
Provide a productive environment.
Create a productive environment, a positive environment, a win-win environment. Thank you. Another. Yes.
Management support.
Management support. Let them know that you're there to support, to encourage people. Ladies and gentlemen, in asking the questions, what we have just done is collected the very best thinking of this group of people. And sitting in this room are some pretty strong personalities. Is that true? I mean, you don't get into management without having something to say. Is that right? But what we've just done in a brief few moments, in about 6 to 7 minutes, we have collected the very best thinking of this entire group of people, and that happened because of a simple process. It began, point A in the process. I ask you a question: in what ways can we get our people to want to do that which must be done? That's the A bit. Ask the question. In what ways? The question is not how can we, but in what ways can we That's the question. The B part, I ask you then to jot down your best thinking and put a tick mark beside your two best ideas. And having done that, we took a look and did item C, in which I ask you to consolidate those ideas and come up with a list at the table level. So the three steps that you take at this point in the process: A, ask the question, in what ways can we solve the problem? And let people put down their ideas. B, tick their best two ideas. And C, consolidate the best thinking of the group. Now then, having done that, we're ready now to move to the next step in this process. We've got the ideas. Could be 6 or 8, could be 10 or 12 ideas that come from the group. Of those, which one's the best?
Mine.
Which is the best idea?
Mine.
Oh, no, mine. My ideas are better than yours, aren't they? Sure. Oh, he's real easy. He agrees, yeah, my ideas are the best, and you're saying, no, you want to argue about it. And often that's what happens, particularly in management meetings. Is that true? Or team meetings. Ideas are like little children. We love our own. True? True. Now, will you work harder to make your idea work or to make someone else's idea work? Oh, for sure. For sure. So if we want to begin to create an environment where people buy in on things, let's start using more of their ideas. And we've covered a simple process for doing that. Now, how do you select? How do you go about selecting the best of those ideas? Sometimes you may be able to use several of them. But generally speaking, one of the ideas is going to be the best one. Does that make sense? All you need to do to determine which is best is simply, having collected the ideas, then identify what are the absolute criteria that the idea must meet. As an example, you may have to set a criteria that says, if we have to spend more than X amount of money, we cannot use the idea. If we cannot implement the idea with our current staff numbers, we're not going to do it. Or you may say, we will recruit and hire up to 3 additional staff to implement the idea and get it working. So all you need to do is to take the list of ideas you've come up with and then identify the absolute criteria that they must meet. Now, when you do that, some of those ideas are going to be eliminated. So let's say you started out with 8 ideas. You looked at your absolute criteria, and now you have a list of 3. You're ready to take the next step. The next step is, of those 3, which of those 3 is the best? And of course, it would be mine, right? No, see, you think it's yours. Which of the 3? So what do? We take the next step, which is, what are the desirable criteria? And all you need to do is simply jot down what those desirables would be. Those are the nice to haves. It would be really nice to have if we could have them. And see which of those 3 ideas that made it through your absolute criteria kind of rises to the surface. And ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that almost every time, with rare exception, cream will rise. The best idea that you've come up with in your creative thinking exercise will surface by simply applying it to the absolute and then the desirable criteria. In essence, there is a process to creative thinking. What are creative people like? What are creative people like? People who think creatively. People who think creatively, they look at ideas that are in existence, but they refocus their experience in new ways. They look at the world with a creative state of mind, not just a memory state of mind. You know, the most damaging words in business and industry today: we've always done it this way. The 6 most damaging words. And that is working from a memory state of mind. Creative people refocus their thinking. Now, let's have some fun. Let's get creative. Think with me for just a few moments. You see on the board 16 dots. Here's your challenge. On a bit of paper, your job is to connect all 16 dots using only 6 contiguous lines. That's a line each connected to the one preceding it, and without lifting your pen from the paper. Would you have a go at doing that, please? Within the box. Is that right? There was nothing in the instruction that said you had to stay in a box. Is that right? The only way you can accomplish this, you must get outside of the box. It's a simple little concept that's been around now for many years, and some of you have no doubt have seen it. But the challenge that we face, very simply, is how can I begin to think creatively? Your first line, very simply, has got to come outside the box. Your second line comes outside the box. Your third line. And that's as far as I'm going. I'll let you get creative. I've done it with 3 lines. There are 3 lines yet to draw that'll connect all 16 dots using 6 contiguous lines and without lifting the pen from the paper. It's an exercise that helps us to begin to realize something. It helps us to realize the point we put in place at the beginning of our discussion. If we don't find a better way to do it, our competition will. Turn on the green light, get creative in our thinking, and step outside the box. Don't put ourselves in that memory state of mind box. So let's stop and review for just a moment. In order to get this creative thinking process going, step number 1 is green light thinking. Step 2 is where you select the best of your ideas. Step 3 is you consolidate the best ideas from each member of your team. And step 4, you then choose the best idea. And item A under that, to help you come up with the best choice, is what are the absolute criteria the idea must beat. And step B, what are the desirables that would be nice to have? Now then, there is one remaining step in our 5-step formula. And that is, once we've selected the best idea, how do we sell it? How do we go about gaining acceptance from all those people who've got to implement the strategies, implement the plans, and make the idea a reality? Does that make sense? Sure does. Now guess where we go from here? If you want to sell the idea, why not let's get creative in our thinking and go right back to step number 1 in this process. In what ways can we sell it in and gain acceptance? Would everyone please turn on the green light and write down your best thinking? Would you now put a tick mark beside the best 2 ideas that you believe will enable us to best sell the idea in and gain acceptance of it? Would you then consolidate those ideas, run them through step 4, your absolute and desirable criteria, and guess what you come up with is a plan of attack for going and selling in your idea. This business of creative thinking is fun, it's exciting, it's dynamic. It keeps not only ourselves alive, it keeps our people more alive and more thinking outside the box in terms of in what ways can we achieve our goals and solve our problems. Creative thinking, there are a couple of simple little concepts that will help. In looking at the concept, let's demonstrate it to begin with. You'll notice you have a worksheet in front of you, and it simply has a number of circles on it. Here's the challenge. In 60 seconds. Would you please think of as many different round objects as you possibly can and write only one round object per circle on your page and see how many of the circles you can fill up in 60 seconds. Go. All right, thank you, pens down. That's time. Now, would you please quickly count up how many circles did you fill in? Count them up real quick and write your number down on the paper. Let me hear your numbers. What have you got? Shout them out nice and loud. What'd you get? 7. 8. Another one. 6. 10. Oh, who can beat 10? Got a 10 over here. Anybody beat 10? Going once. Going twice. Looks like 10 got it. Now think with me for just a moment. Did I put you in a box for this exercise? Not in any way. I said think of as many different round objects as you can. And write only one round object per circle and see how many of the circles you can fill up in 60 seconds. Is that right? Did anyone happen to write down the word ball? B-A-double-L. Did you write that word down? Now, ladies and gentlemen, 10 was the highest number we had. Is that right? Think with me. I'll bet we can easily name, without struggling, at least 10 different balls. I'll start it. Golf ball. Tennis ball. Baseball. Cricket ball. Basketball. Football. Soccer ball. Oh, somebody wants to take issue with the football. It's round around the middle, isn't it? Now, what's the point of this exercise? It is nothing other than a concept called association and a concept called relatedness. That's what this exercise helps us begin to do. Think for a moment. Go mentally right now, mentally, and stand in your kitchen. Open up all the cupboard doors, all right? With a pad now mentally in hand, would you jot down as many different round objects as you can see in the cupboards, writing only one object in each of the circles? Do you see all of a sudden how your mind begins to see associated items that fall into it, related items that fall into it? There's a concept that you might also want to think about. It's called under thy own nose. How many round objects are right on the table in front of you? Watch, ring, pen, cufflink, button, eyeball. We say, Bob, that's not under my nose. I understand. But there are all sorts. As soon as we begin to think association and relatedness, things begin to happen. It helps us to begin to get more creative in our thinking. So by way of review, there's a simple 5-step process that you can go back to your offices today. And implement with your people. The process, step 1, turn on the green light. It's green light thinking. In what ways can we? La-di-da-di-da-di-da. Step 2, ask everyone to turn on the red light and tick their best 2 ideas. Step 3, you simply then consolidate those ideas. Step 4, choose the best one. And we learned that in step 4, you look at the absolute criteria, and B, you look at the desirable criteria. And finally, step 5, you think creatively about how you're going to sell it in, which takes you right back to step 1. In what ways can we sell it in and gain acceptance? Ladies and gentlemen, there are more great ideas in your organization than you can possibly imagine. Yet business and industry continually go outside to hire in the consulting organization to come in and tell us how to do this. I happen to live in a city that has a very major bridge that connects one part of the city to another, the Harbor Bridge. When the Harbor Bridge was originally opened, in order to pay for this monstrosity, they had set toll booths at each end of the bridge. So as you went across the bridge one way, you had to pay a toll on this end. As you came back across the bridge this way, they stopped you and you had to pay a toll on this end. And you might well imagine the major traffic jams it was creating. They called in a consulting firm. They looked the situation over. They spent thousands upon thousands of dollars. Lots of money they spent to solve the problem. And one of the supervisors got his team together and they were chatting about it. And one of the toll booth collectors said, we're charging X on this end and X on this end of the bridge. Why don't we eliminate one end of the toll booth totally and charge them just Y, X plus X? We charge them the same amount. But now we are only slowing traffic one way, not both ways. A simple little creative idea that changed the traffic flow in a major 4.5 million population city that opened up traffic and got people home from work a lot sooner, as well as into the city a lot sooner. Creative thinking, creative ideas are there in your organization waiting for you to walk in and with a simple process, tap that creative potential, which enables you and I to get a leg up on our competition and give them the challenge of catching us if they can.